starting with life. Here he is. Om Agyan Timidandasya Girajana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kalamayam Dadati Swampadantikam Vandeham Shigaro Shiyuta Padikamalam Shigarum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hare Priya Panchakalpa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ajanulambita Bhujo Kamakana Dhakto Sankirtanai Papitaro Kamalaya Takso Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Phalo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karuna Avataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sano Dido Garodaya Pushpanvanto Chitta Sando Tamonito Panchatattva Makam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Kyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So we were requested to speak a little bit about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that is a very extensive subject matter. This is simultaneous going on.
Yeah,
okay. And so we can approach it from different angles of vision. Why did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu come to the world? Well, the scriptures, especially Chaitanya Charitamrita, gives 6 reasons. 3 are called the external, the reasons that are apparent for the conditioned souls to understand. And then there's 3 which is called the internal reasons, which are not so apparent and very mysterious and practically impossible to understand. You could give the class if you want. Probably do better than I did. And so it's described that during the time in Navadvip Dham, there was very much intellectualism. People were quite intelligent. They had known Shastras, at least most of the Shastras, and were spending much time discussing and debating Shastras from different angles of vision. But people also had a strong inclination to material sense gratification. Although they were nicely situated materially, they always wanted to increase their material opulence, their material happiness. So people were worshipping in a very extensive way, or maybe you may say a regular way, the demigods. Because Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that the worship of the demigods is for those who are less intelligent, or for those who are simply interested in gaining benefits from the material energy. And so people were inclined to that type of worship. And they were establishing deities of the different devas and performing formal puja. And after they were done, they were also throwing the deities into the river because there was no use for the deities after the worship. Many things went on. Also, they were because of their intellectualism and because they haven't took to the process of bhakti fully, there's always a sense of boredom or a sense of looking for something more to experience. So they were engaged in all kinds of activities, such as marriages between cats and dogs. They were performing marriages for animals, just to keep, what we say, somewhat active in material life. Because material life, if you don't keep changing it, it gets boring. And when you change it, it seems like it gets better. But then after a while, you have to change again because that becomes boring. Yeah. Mostly it's boring because there's no substance to material life. It's based on the body, not on the actual person. And so this was going on quite regularly. Now, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before he appeared, he sent some of his most intimate associates to pave the way for his appearance, such as Sri Advaitacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur, Mukunda, Srivas Thakur, Punjarik Vidyanidhi, and others. And especially there was very few devotees at the time there, and they were mostly unable to make any difference with the population because people were so set on increasing their material happiness that they weren't interested in devotional service. And so especially Advaitacharya, he was considered the king of all the Brahmins. He was respected for his intelligence and his position, but still he found it very difficult to change people towards devotional life. And so he became very unhappy seeing, and this is the nature of a great soul. The great soul are satisfied within themselves, but they're not satisfied because they see the conditioned souls suffering in the material world and wasting their time in activities that don't bring them any real happiness or benefit. And so they feel for the conditioned souls, and they make efforts to try to bring them where they can find real happiness, and that's at the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service. But Advaitacharya and any other devotees were finding it very impossible to preach. So Advaitacharya was, of course, he is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, but he's not a small person. Combination with Siddha Shiva, which is the original Shiva in the spiritual world. So these two manifestations of this spiritual aspect of the Lord came in together in one form and appeared in this world as Sri Advaita Acharya. Now, because he has this Shiva mood in him, and Shiva is very compassionate. In fact, he's always trying to help the conditioned souls become Krishna conscious. And so he was thinking, what can I do to save these fools and rascals? And so he was trying different ways, but nothing. So he was thinking, maybe I should just take out my chakra and just kill them all. What's the use of their existence? Because merely material life is just a waste of life. What do? You eat, sleep, mate, and you do all kinds of silly things, and then you die. And then you have some friends who do the same thing, and you call that family. So material life is just what it is. It's just an external manifestation of the real thing. It's like the shadow of the person. It's not really the person, because the person is the actual spiritual being that lives within the body, but simply cannot find happiness simply by keeping the body and the body's desires foremost in life. So he was thinking I should just kill them all. But then he thought, maybe I should call the Supreme Lord. It's the job of the Supreme Lord to come in. Maybe by his coming, that he can make a difference. So he made a plan to call the Lord. He went down to the banks of the holy river Ganga, very nicely set up a beautiful altar with shalagram shilas on the altar. And he decorated the shilas with garlands, flowers, sandalwood paste, and tulsi leaves. And every day he would, in very loud voices, call the Supreme Lord and worship the Shila simultaneously. So this went on for some time. And so because of that, it mentions that the Supreme Lord was deciding to come because of the call of Advaita Charya. So this is one of the reasons why the Lord appeared in this world, as explained. And of course, then what did he come? He came to do the business that he was thinking of doing, and that is uplifting the conditioned souls. And being in Kali Yuga, there was only one means by which they can lift up the conditioned soul. Kalir Doshanidi Rajan Asti Eko Mahagun Kirtana Eva Krishnasya Mukta Sangam Pranam Bhajab. That no matter what form of spiritual practice you perform in this age, it may elevate you to a little higher stage above the material energy, but you cannot find complete satisfaction or perfection in these activities unless you take to the direct process of complete glorification of the Lord. Then, as recommended in this age, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the Lord came to, what we say, bring the Yuga Dharma. Yuga means age and Dharma means the religion. So the religion of the age is very simple. Chant the holy names of the Lord. When you feel happy, dance. You get tired, you take a little foodstuffs offered to the Lord, prasadam, and then you continue with chanting again. And then you dance some more, and then you get a little tired, little foodstuffs, get revived, and chant again. And you dance some more. And this way you finish your life like that and go back to Godhead. That's the process. If you could do that, you'd go back to Godhead, no problem. But we won't do that. We'll do something else. That's the problem. But if we could do that all the time, or at least most of the day, then the spiritual world will become, the material world will become the spiritual world automatically. And so he came as a secondary, and it's called the external reason, to inaugurate the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yada Yada Yadharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata Abhutanam Adharmasya Tadatvanam Sajamayaham Pavitranayam Sarunam Vinasanaya Chaduskritam Dharma Samstarpanartayam Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. Whenever there is a increase of irreligion and a rise of irreligious persons on the planet, I come. And I come to reestablish the Dharma and remove irreligion, and also to give pleasure to my devotees. So that is the third reason why the Lord appeared, these three. The calls of Advaita Charya, establishing the Yuga Dharma, and reawaken people to spiritual life through the process of devotional service. So, but there are three internal reasons, which are the Lord's personal reasons why he came. And these three reasons are interesting. There was a story it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Mangala by Lochan Das Thakur, where he describes that Krishna was in Dwarka. He's surrounded by his queens, and his principal queen was with him, Rukmini. And she was, in a very loving way, massaging his lotus feet. And she was massaging and massaging and massaging. And her emotions were becoming very strong. And finally she was starting to speak in a very emotional way. And she said, "My dear Lord, oh Lord, you don't know how wonderful you are. You don't know how wonderful your lotus feet are." And she was speaking so lovingly, with so much affection and so much devotion, that Krishna Now he's Dwarkadish, and he's in Dwarka. He's the king of Dwarka. And he's thinking, I don't know how wonderful I am. Do you ever think about that? How wonderful you are? Some people do that all the time. Not only they do that, they make sure other people understand also. That's not our program. That's material life. And so, then, in that mood of expressing that love, she finally came to the point, she said, but there is just one person, only one, in all of existence, anywhere, who knows how wonderful you are. And that is Srimati Radharani. So when Krishna heard that, he was thinking, I don't know how wonderful I am. It's a good idea, I like to know. But there is a person who knows how wonderful I am. So how will I be able to find out how wonderful I am? There's only one way I can do that, is I have to become that person. So Mahaprabhu, his internal reasons, his heartfelt reasons for appearance, is to experience Radharani's love for him, the happiness that she feels in that love for him, and what are the qualities about him that attracts her. So these are the three internal reasons. So in order to do that, he manifested himself as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. Radharani and Krishna in one form, but the mood is Radharani and the person is Krishna. So when you think about it, he's quite a mysterious manifestation of the Lord. He's Krishna, but he is in the role of his pure devotee, can't say devotee, but his internal energy who has pure love for him on the highest platform, Srimati Radharani. So in order to experience that love and to also understand what about that, what is it about her love that is so attractive, he becomes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, when in his manifestation as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was never in the role of the Supreme Lord. He was always in the role of the pure devotee who was worshipping the Supreme Lord. So he's a devotee of himself, worshipping himself from the position of his pure devotee. Interesting. And so, therefore he's called Gauranga. And she is called Gaurangi. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sukhi Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. She is golden in color, and he is golden in color also. Angam means limbs. So their body form is also full of molten gold. Just to divert a second away from the talk, and I'm sure many of you have been to Mayapur, yeah? How many have been to Mayapur? Pretty good, that's good. Some places I go, like it asks for hands, and there's like one hand coming up slowly. It's good, yeah. Srila Prabhupada said we should go to Mayapur every year during the Gaur Purnima festival for at least 8 days. He wrote that and spoke it. But when you go, you see Panchatattva there, beautiful Panchatattva deities. Beautiful big deities, the biggest deities I think in the world of the Lord. You know, when deities are small, they're sweet. When they get big, they somewhat lose their sweetness, but not Mahaprabhu. He becomes even sweeter. He defies all logic. So when you look at the deities, if you carefully note that they're all golden, but there's 3 different colors of gold on the altar. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pure solid gold. He's a Mangi. And then you have Gadadhar Pandit is also of the same exact color as Sri Chaitanya. It's just pure gold. But then you have Srivas and Advaita. They're gold with a whitish color connected to the, if you look carefully, you'll see it's like a whitish color gold. You can see tinges of white in it. And Nityananda, he's unique. He's reddish gold. So when Prabhupada was asked about his internal mood, he never answered, but he said, my color in the spiritual world is reddish gold. Which means that he's coming from the tattva of Sri Nityananda Ram. And so Lord Chaitanya manifested that color and exhibited her internal loving mood in his pastimes in this material world. He never liked to be called the Lord. In fact, when he was called the Lord, he would block his ears and sometimes become a little angry. Anyone who would refer to him as the Lord, he would say, no, I am not the Lord, I am the devotee of Krishna, I am not Krishna. But he was Krishna. So he's hiding something. What is he saying? During that time, and you find it even today, those of you who spend time in India, you know there are people who like to claim them to be the Supreme Lord, or an incarnation of the Lord, in order to get some followers, to get some prestige, to get some popularity, get some material remunerations. And so this goes on, because this is the material world. Just like there is real money and then there's counterfeit. So there are counterfeit gods all over the place. And you'll see. And so the Lord, in order to try to destroy that mood, that the conditioned soul, or the living entity in the material world, is not God. But he is Jiva Sarupa Krishna Nityadas. He's a servant of the Lord. So, and that was also quite fashionable at that time, that people would also claim to be an incarnation or actually the Supreme Lord himself. So Mahaprabhu, one of his programs was to destroy that idea by saying it's not possible for the living entity in the material world to be God, although he was. Only once or twice. In fact, there was one beautiful time when, in the house of Srivas Thakur, the Lord appeared there one early in the morning, and he was in a different mood. His mood was completely different. He was in the mood of the Supreme Lord. So he came, and there were devotees there. Normally they would go out on Harinam every day. Udilu Aruna Kodana Baji Dwijamani Goda Amani Jagi Tatari Baji Loro Gana Gana Jaramaji Loro. It's a beautiful song sung by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur describing Lord Chaitanya would go out every day. He would leave after he would take his bath. He would immediately get dressed and come out with his associates and go chanting and dancing in the village, waking up all the people. They're sleeping. You're wasting your time. Why don't you use your time to worship the Supreme Lord? That way your time will be used in a beneficial way. And then people would come out of the houses, oh, there is Nimai Pandit, because they knew him as Nimai Pandit. And they would see him, and they would say, oh, he's so beautiful. And that was one of the ways he changed people's minds, because of his appearance. It was so beautiful. His color was like molten gold. He was always smiling, and he was 2 meters tall. Really tall. His arms reached all the way down to his knees. And he would sing and dance with his devotees, and they would go through the villages, and then he would wind up at the Ganga, take his bath, go back home, take some Mahaprasadam, rest a little bit, come out again, and start chanting and dancing. They would do that every day. And this time, he said to the devotees, why don't let's, so he came into the house of Srivas Thakur, and Srivas worships Shalagram Shila. His whole altar is full of Shilas. the Lord did something. He went right on the altar, took the Sheilas in his cloth, sat on the altar with the Sheila sitting on him and said, "Worship me." And the devotees, whoa! They were so happy because, they can't say anything that he's the Lord, but they know it because he gets angry. But now he's opening up and he's, worship me. So the devotees began kirtan, and then they're singing and they're dancing. And then this went on throughout the whole day. And then they decided to perform Abhishek for the Lord. So the devotees were bringing big clay pots full of Ganga water and passing it up. They made big lines from the Ganga all the way up to where Mahaprabhu was, because Srivasa's house was nearby. And they were just filling the pots and they would bring it, and then Adwaita and Nityananda and some of the more intimate associates would be pouring the water on Lord Chaitanya. And he's there fully clothed and being bathed like that. And so this went on, and then everybody was really enjoying, bathing the Lord. Then at one point when that was over, because Mahaprabhu had noticed, he called Srivas over. Srivas, who's that lady standing in the Ganga? Because there was one old lady, she was elderly, and she was just standing in the middle of the Ganga, filling the pots and handing it to the next devotee so they could bring it to Mahaprabhu. So she stayed way in the background. She was elderly, like a maidservant. And then Srivas said, "Well, that's my maidservant, Duki." And Lord Chaitanya said, "Duki?" Duki means miserable. He said, "Now we will give her a new name. We will now call her Sukhi." Sukhi. Happy. Instead of Duki, miserable. And so he blessed her. Why did he do that? What was it about her that attracted the Lord's attention? Is that she didn't want any recognition for herself. All she wanted to do was serve the other devotees. So she remained as in the background as she could. But the Lord noticed her humility and her enthusiasm for service, and so he blessed her. And he also gave her love of God by doing that. And that was Mahaprabhu's mercy. He would sometimes, when he would be pleased with someone's devotion, immediately he just bestow upon them love of God. And all of a sudden you've reached perfection. That was Mahaprabhu. He did that often. That was the mercy that he gave when he was personally present. Now, in order to get it, you have to work for it. But it's still available. It's still available. And so, the program went on, and then Mahaprabhu changed clothes, and then they did a boga offering. So they were bringing fruit and various types of sugar cane and various types of food items, and they were just piling it up in front of Mahaprabhu, and he was eating it, whatever they gave him. And they would bring, bananas and various types of vegetables, and he just eat them. He was eating everything. His name is Vishwambar. Vishwambar means one who nourishes the whole universe. So for him to eat everything is nothing. He eats 56 times in Jagannath Puri every day. So he was eating everything, and they were running out of things to bring. And he kept saying, just like, when when Krishna was performing his pastime on Govardhan Hill, Govardhan Hill was also saying, Aniyor, Aniyor, bring more, bring more. And so Mahaprabhu was saying, bring more, bring more. So they were going to different villages trying to find more things to bring. And the more and more devotees started to come, and the place was really full of devotees. And everybody was so happy seeing Mahaprabhu in that position of accepting the worship. And this went on for a little. And then they did they ended up with the Gaurarti. Kivajayo Jayo Gaura Chande Arati Kesho Jayo Jayo Gaura Chande Arati Kesho. It's not time yet. Still early. So they sang that beautiful song, and the Lord was just accepting all of the worship. And this was when this one went on and on. Everybody was in ecstasy, singing, dancing, and worshiping the Lord. Everybody was so happy. Finally, this was going on. Now it's the evening time, and the Lord stopped. And then he turned to everyone. He said, take a benediction. Any one of you, all of you, ask anything from me. Whatever you want, ask. And the devotees were a little puzzled. Because they're thinking, what we have, we're seeing you. We don't need to ask for anything. This is all we can ask for. But the Lord was insistent. And so he would sometimes point to someone, ask. And sometimes they would say, well, make my father a devotee. And the Lord would say, tatastu. Okay. And then, so in other words, whatever they had, but he never asked for anything for themselves. They always asking for others. Or sometimes they would say, well, you could also give me, pure devotion to you. And devotees, they would ask only for spiritual things for themselves and for others. So at one point, the devotee said to the Lord, give Mukunda love of God. Now Mukunda is one of the intimate associates of the Lord who sings for the Lord. He sings very beautiful, and the Lord always dances when he sings. But as soon as the Lord heard the name Mukunda, he became very silent and serious. He looked like he was quite disturbed. And then he spoke. He said, Mukunda, he is a rascal. He is the type of person who comes and offers the obeisances to your feet and then takes a stick and hits you on the head. That's Mukunda. The devotees couldn't understand. They would say, Mukunda, he's so dear to you. He always sings and you dance. And we always seen wonderful relationships. But then the Lord explained. He goes, every night, he goes out to these different yogis, and he hears what they say. And he listens to people who speak that karma and jnana is superior to bhakti. And he agrees with them. Because he's very simple by nature, therefore whoever he's with, he agrees with. People like that? And they always want to be friendly with everybody, so they agree with everybody. So he's like that. So the Lord said, I don't want to see Mukunda for 10 million births. Wow. Because it says Lord Chaitanya is soft as a rose and as hard as a thunderbolt. He can be very strong. And so the devotees were shocked to hear that. So they were thinking, we can't give up yet. And so they said, well, my dear Lord, please. And they start glorifying Mukunda, praying, pleading to the Lord. The Lord wouldn't change. And finally, the Lord became a little softer. And he said, all right, he can come. First he said, no. First he said, I don't ever want to see Mukunda again. That was the statement. Then he said, all right, he can come and see me after 10 million births. Now Mukunda's in range. He's hearing all this. But he's from a distance away. And then when the Lord said that, he heard that, he became ecstatic. And he started dancing and singing. Only 10 million births. Only 10 million births. I will see. I will see. Only after 10 million births I will see. Well, the Lord noticed Mukunda was happy at the fact that he's willing to wait that long to get the Lord's association again. And the Lord said, all right, bring him immediately. And so he came. He fell at the feet of the Lord, and the Lord chastised him for his, rascal activities. And he apologized. So then devotees were asking for different people were asking. He said to Haridas Thakur, take a benediction from me. Haridas Thakur said, I don't need anything. I'm happy. I'm simply would like to chant your name, and I'm happy just having your association. No, take a benediction. All right. At any birth that I take birth, any place I take birth, anywhere I take birth, that would be a birth in the family of your devotees, so I can take the remnants of their prasadam. That was the Lord granted him that. Then he said to Srivasi, remember? You remember how before I came into this world, you used to go hear Devananda Pandit speak about Srimad Bhagavatam. He was so expert at reciting all of the verses in Bhagavatam. And you would go to hear him. And one time you went to one of his satsangs, and his disciples were there, and he was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was reciting it so nicely, and you become absorbed. And as you were becoming absorbed, you were also becoming ecstatic. And in that ecstasy, you started to exhibit expressions of happiness. But that was disturbing to the other devotees there, so they started to think what we should do. So they came and they picked you up and they took you outside and put you on the ground and walked back in. And Devananda Pandit didn't do anything to stop them. And then after some time you came out of your ecstasy and you wiped the dirt off your clothes and you went back to your place and you sat in your room all alone. You were very sad. And you picked up the Srimad Bhagavatam and you started to read, and you were reading and reading and reading. But at one point I entered into your heart just to give you some happiness, some peace. And after some time you were feeling very happy and very peaceful again. Do you remember Srivas? And Srivas fainted. He fainted because now he understood why he experienced what he experienced. And so Srivas he got the mercy. He said to the devotees, there's one devotee, he lives very nearby, his name is Kolovich. His name is Sridhar. Kolovich means banana seller. So he was a banana seller. He was called Kolovich or Sridhar. And he said, go call him. And they said, where? Nobody knew who he was. And the Lord said, you just walk in that direction and just call out, Sridhar, 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 the Lord wants to see you. So they were going, they were calling, and finally they got near Sridhar, and somebody's calling my name. Oh, it's the devotees of Nimai Pandit. Oh. And they came, they said, Sridhar, Nimai Pandit, actually, the Supreme Lord, he's here, he wants to see you. Me? Yeah, okay. So he came into the assembly. When he saw the Lord, he immediately fainted. And then he got up, and Sridhar, he said, you have been my devotee for so many lives. Now, when the Lord used to go to Sridhar's place, Sridhar would sell banana leaves, banana cups, and banana plates. And whatever he would make, he would use half of it to worship the Ganges, which was very little. And the rest he would live on. And he lived in this shack. It had so many holes in it. So when it would rain, all the rain would come inside. But he didn't care. He was always chanting the holy name of the Lord. And sometimes he would stay up all night chanting. And he would chant loud. And then the people who were around there were trying to sleep, and they would say, "Hey, Sheena, sweetheart, shut up." And he would keep chanting. They would say to each other, "He must be hungry. Let's give him something." So they took some gourd or some zucchini and threw it at him. "Here, eat this and go to sleep." But he would ignore them and just keep chanting. The Lord would come in the form of Nimai Pandit, the very beautiful Brahmana, and he would say, "Hey, sweetheart, how much for your banana leaves, banana cups?" And then he would quote the price in Srivar. And the Lord would say, "Too much, you're cheating the Brahmins." No, he said, no, this is the best price you could get. You can go anywhere, you'll find that this is the best. No, sweetheart, you're trying to make money by cheating the Brahmins. And I know you have a big pile of wealth, and someday I'm going to expose that wealth to everybody. And Sridhar couldn't understand what he was saying. He was so simple and so humble, and all he would do was just worship the Lord. So now, when the Lord called him, he saw that same Nimai Pandit, that Brahmin, who used to harass him all the time. And he fainted, and then he got up, and the Lord said, "I'm very pleased with you. Please ask me for some benediction." He said, "What benediction can I ask? I'm seeing you." No, ask for some benediction. The Lord was very insistent. If the Lord wants to give you something, you got to take it. And if the Lord wants to take away something, you can't keep it. So then the Lord was persistent. He said, "Sridhar, I'll give you a nice wife. I'll give you wealth on the same level as Indra. I'll give you a planet." And Sridhar said, "My dear Lord, why you want to make my life miserable? I'm happy. What am I going to do with all that stuff?" So he was saying all of these material things are simply a botheration. And so the Lord gave up, didn't know what to say. Sridhar, say something, ask for something. And then the Sridhar said, "Please, my Lord, in any birth that I come in this material world, come and harass me and take my banana leaves." And the Lord was very pleased by his humility. So one after another, the Lord was giving benedictions to everyone. Finally, someone came up and said, "My dear Lord, give love of God to your mother, Sachimata." Again, the Lord became very silent. And then he spoke. "My mother, she's an offender." Oh, holy stick. The goddess of fortune herself. Your mother, who is so dear to all of us and to you. How could she be an offender? And then he explained. My older brother, Vishwarup, he used to go to Advaitacharya's place, and Advaitacharya would always teach him from the Vedas. And he became so expert in knowledge of the Vedas that he was thinking, I'm finished with material life. And because his parents, Mosachi Mata, they want to get him married. So he just decided one day to leave home, and never came back. Now, Sachimata and Jagadath Mishra had 8 daughters that were born, and they died right at childbirth. And then Vishwarup came, and that was the prize of their life. And then, of course, Nimai, who they named Vishwambar, he came. So now, when Vishwarup was gone, only left was Nimai Pandit, her only son. So, the Lord said, and then I started to go and hear from Advaitacharya. And my mother was thinking, oh no, I'm going to lose the other one. So she thought, she didn't speak, She just thought. She said, Advaita? He is not Advaita. He is Dvaita. Advaita means one, and Dvaita means two. In other words, he's dualistic. He's dualistic. So she thought that, but she didn't say anything. So the Lord knew that. So he said, she has offended Advaita Acharya. And then the devotee said, well, what can she do to get relief from the fence? And they said, the Lord said, well, she has to take the dust of his lotus feet and place it on her head. And then she'll be free from that offense. So Advaita is there, and he's thinking, my foot dust on the mother of the Lord Supreme Personality? No way. So there was some resistance there. So, Sachi Mata's there, Advaita is there. Then the kirtan went on, and after some time the kirtan was so ecstatic, Advaita fell unconscious, and then the Lord looked at his mother. Okay, here you go, this is your opportunity. So she went and stole the dust, put it on her head, and the Lord was very pleased. So why did he do that? Why? His mother really didn't commit any offense. But he wanted to show one particular point, which is really important. Do not carry any negative thoughts in your mind against anyone. Because although it's in the mind, it's not an offense. But if it stays in the mind, it may also grow. And if it grows, it can turn into something else. Some speech or some activity. So he was teaching the most subtle form of life is that keep your mind always connected to the spiritual realm, and then your mind will always be in the best position. Never think bad about anyone. Of course, we don't think bad about anyone, but we know there are many bad people out there who do bad things, who hurt other people. So we don't feel very happy about that. But we understand that they are just victims of the material energy also. So we don't think good of them, but it's better not to waste your time thinking bad about them either. Because it just makes the mind, unhappy. So the Lord wanted to teach that. So for 21 hours, the Lord performed what is called the Mahaprakash Leela. It's mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavad. In detail, how he, from devotee to devotee, was giving benedictions, and just giving his association as the Supreme Personality. That was one of the rarest times when he actually exhibited himself for who he actually was, and all the devotees were happy. Mahaprabhu was traveling one time through South India. This was when he was going on his South Indian tour. He was all alone, and people were following him because he was chanting and dancing and dancing and chanting and chanting and dancing and dancing and dancing and chanting and chanting and chanting and dancing and dancing and dancing and chanting and dancing. And more chanting and dancing. And he was making everybody Krishna conscious. And so he came to one area in India known as Kurmakshetra. And there was a particular Brahmin who lived there. He was called the Kurma Brahmin. He was very, very devotional. And so he made him a point to meet the Lord. And he requested the Lord, while you're in Kurmakshetra, stay at my home. We will provide everything you need. So the Lord was pleased, and he did. So for 4 days he stayed at the home of the Kurma Brahmin. And the family worshipped him so nicely. Prepared meals for him, massaged his feet, gave him all of the comforts that he was, whatever they needed to make him comfortable. He was so happy, and he spoke to them about Krishna for 4 days. And after 4 days, it was time for the Lord to go on. And so the Lord went on, and then he's leaving, and he said, he made his point, I have to go, continue my tour. But then the Kurma Brahmin was following him. And the Lord looked back and he saw the Kurma Brahmins coming behind him. And when he stopped, he turned, he said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going with you." You can't do that. You have your family. You have your wife, you have your family, you have your, everything is there. So he said in very nice words, the heck with that. I don't want any of it. And the Lord said, "No, you can't do that. But I'll give you an instruction. You go back home, and whoever you meet, tell them about Krishna. Whoever you meet, teach him to chant Hare Krishna." He said, "If you do that, you will never leave my association." And then he said, "By my command, be guru, save the land." The Lord spoke very directly to teach that one doesn't have to change their material situation. They simply have to add Krishna to it. Grihe tako, bone tako, sabdahari bali tako. Wherever you are, whether you're a grihasta, brahmachari, sannyas, whatever your position in society is, or in the world, remain, but become Krishna conscious. That's all. And in the way he explained it, and give that Krishna consciousness to others. Because Mahaprabhu's mission was three. One, to inspire people to chant the holy names and to develop an attachment for chanting. That's the first thing. The second thing was to associate with and serve Vaishnavas. And Vaishnava association means service to the Vaishnava, not just being in the same area with others, but thinking of ways by which one can serve the other devotees. That is, Vaishnava Seva, we always think how to serve. How can I serve? And they're always, and if you think like that, you'll always get ideas. Krishna will always help you. And the third was Jiva Doya. Jiva refers to the living entity in the material world, and Doya means compassion. To show compassion to those who are not engaged in spiritual life, and to help them come to spiritual life. In other words, sometimes we call it preaching, or reaching out to others. So this is Mahaprabhu's 3-point mission, is to develop a taste for chanting. How do you develop a taste for chanting? By associating and serving Vaishnavas. That is one of the main reasons by which you awaken that taste for chanting. When you serve other Vaishnavas, when you do kirtan and chant more and more and more, that taste will develop. And, of course, so in serving and associating with devotees, and thinking of ways how one can connect to, in some way, to reach out. And there's so many ways. We were at one seminar one time, and one of the seminars was to think of different ways you could preach Krishna consciousness. So that everyone was going around the room and everyone was giving ideas on how to preach, how to reach. And we came up with over 40 different ways you can somehow reach out in different medias, in different venues, different ideas on how to spread Krishna consciousness. There's so many ways. Of course, the best and easiest and most direct and most recommended way is book distribution. That is as Srila Prabhupada said, book distribution is our best form of preaching. And so, not everyone can do book distribution, but everyone can somehow or other think of ways by which, just like, I remember Kadambakana Maharaj, all glories to his devotion to Krishna, which is really amazing. Last night we spoke for about an hour and a half. But one thing I remember him saying is that he would come in front of the devotees and say, "Okay, Here's a nice program you can all adopt. How many families in this congregation? And then they would give a number. And he said, all right, every day for 1 month, one family hosts a program. So if you have 30 families, you have 30 programs every month. That means if you do it every month, then you have 365 programs. So it's a pretty ingenious way. Oh, one day a month I have to host a program and invite all the devotees. Now, of course, not every devotee can go to every program, but at least there's programs every day. And that's the important thing, that somewhere in the congregation there is some satsang going on, some kirtan program going on, some pravachan being explained. We can do that. I'm sure there's more. I don't know about this area of Daruvar. I can't get it right for some reason.
Like Daru Brahman.
Daru Brahmanvar. Var. Okay. So I don't know if there's 30 families in this area, but I know in the Croatian Yatra there's more than 30. So you can spread it out over different. But you don't have to do it for 30. You can do it for 26 days, and then the other 4 days you go to the temple. Once a week. But it's an idea. And everyone gets a chance to, all the ladies in each of the household get the chance to serve all the devotees by cooking. And hosting a program in your home becomes a mandir. It's nice. So that's an idea. Think about it. Nobody ever gets excited about this one. They all look at me and say, what else are you going to talk about, Raj? But it's nice when you think about it. It's like in a place like London, when I preach in London. London is huge. There's congregational sections in all sections of London that are each of its own congregation. So there's an average of 10 programs going on every night of the week in London. Everywhere. There's always something going on. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 almost 10 programs every night somewhere. So anytime you want to go to a program, something's happening, somewhere. So that's nice, and that's how we spread Krishna consciousness. Sadhu Sangha. Through association with devotees, hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Well, I know we got our families, we got our work, we got our other things that we don't talk about. And so we have to do all of those other things. Forget it. And then the whole world will become Krishna conscious. Really. If everybody in the world did that, the world would be Krishna conscious in no time. Fast. So this is an idea, a nice formula. So, how did I get on that subject? I forgot where I came. Yeah, but even before that. Somewhere in there. We were talking about Mahaprabhu, yeah. By my command, be Guru, save the land. And then Lord Chaitanya said, if you do that, you will always have my association. You will never feel separation. Right? And then when he was in Kurmakshetra, just before he had arrived, there was one Brahmin. He was a leper. He had a very strong case of leprosy. His name was Vasudeva. And his leprosy was so severe that he could not be with anyone. And so he lived alone. And his body was full of sores from leprosy. But Vasudeva was very humble. very devoted. And in his body, where the sores were, there were worms living in his body. And sometimes one of the worms would fall to the ground, and he would pick it up and put it back where it fell out. And he would think, God has given my body as a place for this worm to live. So he would think that's his rightful place. But that was his humility. And he was a devotee. Now he had heard that Mahaprabhu was coming through, so he wanted to see the Lord. He knew he couldn't associate, he just wanted to see. But the Lord passed through Kurmashetra, and Vasudeva was not able to see the Lord. And so then he learned that the Lord had already left, and he was feeling so miserable. He was condemning himself. All I wanted to do was see him, that's all. And I'm so wretched, so fallen. And the Lord, after he left, because he's the indwelling super soul in the hearts of all living beings, he knows everyone's mind and heart, he turned around, came back. And he went right to the place where Vasudeva was staying. He went right up to Vasudeva and embraced him. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Vas. And when he was embraced by the Lord, his whole body became healthy. All of the sores were gone. He was completely whole. His body was just strong and healthy again. And then the Lord looked at him. And he said, Vasudeva, you don't look happy. He said, I'm not. And you think, why is he not happy? He got special mercy. But then he asked, why? Why are you not happy? Well, my Lord, you have shown me your special favor. And people will know that I have been given special favor by you. And then they will praise me, and I will become proud. So this, if I become proud, that's the worst thing. So the Lord thought for a minute, and he said, then do one thing, Vasudeva, and you'll never become proud. He said, incessantly, that means without stopping, chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. He said, if you do that, you'll never become proud. So that's a lesson that the Lord also taught us. And here's the way to stay connected in the spiritual news is chant Satatam Kirtayantam Mam. Always chant Hare Krishna. When you're walking, when you're talking, when you're whatever you're doing, remember Krishna. And the easiest way is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What easier way can you get than that? Then you practice. The more you do kirtan, the more you do japa, the more that stays with you throughout the day. And then you can remember and you can chant more and more and more. And pretty soon you're in the spiritual world. You're not part of this world anymore. But the mind won't let us, right? The mind wants to go here and think about this and do this and complain about this and this is not right, he's not right, she's not right, I'm not right, nothing's right. And when we get into that, don't worry about it. You can't change this world, it's what it is. Just change yourself. If you change yourself, you change everything else around you. So that's the way, is always remember the Lord. And that's the easiest and most recommended way, especially in this age of Kali, where people are not so much inclined to spiritual activity. Mahaprabhu has made it easy. And he's made it available to everybody, no matter who you are, no matter what position you're in, it's all available for everyone. Not only, but what is he making available? He's making available the spiritual world. Golokera Premadana Harinam, Shankirtan Ratin Janmilo Kena Upai. That he's opening up Vrindavan to anyone and everyone if they develop this namruchi, sweet taste for developing the holy name. When you develop that sweet taste in holy name and you associate and serve Vaishnavas, then the spiritual world becomes available. And then Mahaprabhu introduces you to Srimati Radharani, and she thinks, should I let him in? I'll give him a chance. Looks like a nice devotee. And so if you're under the care of Radharani, she takes you into Vrindavan. And Mahaprabhu is Srimati Radharani in her mood. So he has that connection where he can bring us to Sri Vrindavan Dham. And that means anyone and everyone is qualified by the mercy of Mahaprabhu. He is so merciful. So merciful that it's impossible to understand his mercy. It's not the fact that we're still in Krishna consciousness is an example of his mercy. Okay, so there's so much we can say about Mahaprabhu. Anybody want to add anything or had a question yet? Narayan? Okay, Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the lecture. I find it interesting that all these stories led to the conclusion of humbleness, from what I've noticed.
That's how, yeah, that's Mahaprabhu's main preaching, Trinadapi Sunichena. Tayari Vasya Hishnuna Manina Mamanadena. Kirtaniya Sadarahi. And that verse from the Shikshastikam prayers is the most important of all verses. Because that allows you to make progress in devotional service. Unless we develop those qualities, Krishna consciousness becomes very difficult.
But it begs the question, where did the banana seller go? Did he actually have to...
No, what happened was, it mentions that he joined the association of Lord Chaitanya's devotees. He became a regular associate. The Lord brought him into the inner group. Yeah. The Lord would do that. Yeah.
Good, I'm glad.
I think he gave up his banana salad.
For that life.
At least that life. Yeah. Yes. Radharani, is it?
Aradhana.
Aradhana.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the wonderful lecture, like always. I just wanted to ask, because you mentioned, slight mention, that you spoke with Kadamba Kanana Maharaj for some time, for 1 hour and a half. So I'm just wondering if there is maybe something that you can share with us about.
Well, that was last night in the temple. I spoke about him.
Oh.
Yeah. And they asked me to speak last night, so the devotees came and we had a talk. And I mentioned whatever I knew about my association with him and mentioned many of his, outstanding qualities. So that was the topic of discussion. Of course, it centered all around Harinam, Kirtan, like that. And that's recorded, I think, and if you want to hear the lecture. And a few other people, also one devotee from Croatia was there, and what his name was? Gudakesh. You know Gudakesh? Yeah, he's from, where's he from? Varazin, yeah, he was there. He spoke very enthusiastically about Maharaj. That was nice. Talking about his personal experiences. So yeah, that was last night we spoke. So. Anything else?
I just wanted to reassure myself, since Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives this sort of advice to this devotee that just chant Hare Krishna and you won't become proud.
Always. chant always.
That is basically his ultimate advice on.
Yeah, yeah, and that's for everybody, not just for that certain circumstance, yeah. Practice, Prabhupada said, you just practice chanting always. And you actually it becomes more and more as you practice it. Remember not to forget, and forget, no, remember not to forget, and don't forget to remember. If you practice and you become a little bit, then when you see you're not chanting, you'll immediately start chanting. And after a while, you'll start recognizing, oh, I'm not chanting now, so you'll start chanting immediately. But if you don't practice, you don't get to that stage of actually remembering. Anything else? Can't see in the background there. Okay. So we have some more kirtan?
Yes.
About
Bharati and Kirtan.
Arti. Okay.
Svi možete ustati sad, možemo se malo